Welcome to the Deep Dive, the show that's, well, it's built entirely around your quest for knowledge. We take the most complex source material, the dense articles, ancient texts, the cutting-edge research, and we try to distill it all into profound, usable insight.
And today, we are really undertaking a deep dive into spiritual mechanics. The listener's question that came in was just so specific and honestly brilliant.
It really was.
What exactly is wisdom? Specifically that deep penetrating insight they call Vipassanā, and how, mechanically, systematically, how does this kind of wisdom actually develop?
And we should be clear, we are moving far beyond just, simple philosophical ideas or a few ethical guidelines. To answer this, we're diving straight into the foundational literature.
The earliest Buddhist suttas or discourses.
Exactly. And these aren't abstract poems. They're systematic blueprints for generating knowledge. They outline the exact progressive path that leads to spiritual maturity and ultimately the final freedom of the mind.
It's a precise map. That's the best way to think about it.
Yeah.
Our mission here is to navigate these structured texts, to understand the whole process. We want to know the components you need, the order you cultivate them in, and the actual content of that ultimate realization.
The knowledge and vision, as they call it.
The knowledge and vision that results in freedom. So yeah, this deep dive is all about the nuts and bolts, the mechanics of liberation.
Okay, let's unpack this. And it seems like if we want to understand the solution, which is wisdom, we absolutely have to start with the problem that this wisdom is designed to solve. That entire system, it begins with suffering and the causal chain that produces it.
Exactly. The foundation of the entire training is understanding the problem of, what the texts call dukkha, or suffering. And the sources are absolutely relentless in detailing the precise steps that lead to it. It's not presented as a moral judgment, it's more like physics.
A kind of spiritual physics. And the mechanism they describe is called dependent origination. It's the central explanation for why existence, as we usually experience it, is characterized by this deep anguish. So can you walk us through that chain reaction? How does it all start?
So the cycle begins with ignorance. The text states that ignorance is the requirement for choices, or what's sometimes called instigating activity. These are the volitional formations that drive all our actions.
So without ignorance, that activity it can't even get started.
It can't be set in motion. And once that instigation, those choices are made, they require consciousness to, register and organize the experience.
Okay, so consciousness needs raw material to work with.
Right, which is name and form.
The mind-body complex, the organism itself.
The whole shebang. And this name and form needs a way to interact with the world, which naturally leads to the six sense fields.
The eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, and this one's so important, the mind. They're like the portals for all experience.
They are the portals. And once you have the portals, the next link in the chain is contact. This happens when a sense organ meets its object. The eye meets a sight, for instance.
And that contact, that's the immediate requirement for feeling.
Immediately. It's that raw experience that's either pleasant, painful, or just neutral.
And this right here feels like where the cycle really picks up speed and spirals into suffering. That feeling, whether it's good or bad,
is the direct requirement for craving. That is the immediate, almost instinctive desire to hold on to that present feeling, or to just push away the unpleasant one.
And the sources show that this craving, it doesn't just stay as a wish, it sort of hardens into grasping.
Exactly. It's no longer just a passing wish, it's active clinging.
So why is that specific link grasping so consequential in this chain?
Because grasping is the condition for continued existence. By clinging to experiences, to our identities, to our desires, we're actively fueling the generator of the next life, the next iteration of the self.
Wow. So that continued existence becomes the requirement for rebirth.
It does. And here you get to the brutal, just unavoidable conclusion of the whole sequence. Rebirth, the sources say, inevitably leads to the entire mass of suffering.
And they list it all out.
All of it. The obvious pain points: old age, death, sorrow, lamentation, pain, sadness, and distress.
The entire mass of suffering originates in precisely this way. It's a closed system.
It is. But the beautiful corollary, and this is what provides the map for the rest of our deep dive, is that if you can stop the requirement, if there is, as the texts say, the utter cessation of instigation,
then there's no origination of suffering. The whole process just collapses.
the whole thing falls apart.
Okay, so we have to go all the way back to the start of that chain, ignorance. But I want to push on that definition for a moment. I think most people hear ignorance and they think it just means a lack of data or maybe not being well educated. What do these texts mean by ignorance?
It's extremely precise and very practical. Ignorance in this context is defined as the state of mind when an unlearned, ordinary person fails to truly understand 5 crucial points concerning the core components of their own experience.
And those core components, they come up constantly in the suttas. They're the 5 aggregates of grasping, right?
That's them. Form, which is the physical body. Feeling, the hedonic tone. Perception, recognizing things. Choices, our volitional actions and thoughts. And finally, consciousness, just basic awareness.
So these are the building blocks of what we mistake for a self.
The very building blocks. Now, the 5 things the ignorant person doesn't understand about each of these aggregates are their origin, their ending, their gratification, their drawback, and the escape from them.
Okay, let's dwell on that for a second. So if I don't understand the origin of, say, my physical body form, I might assume it's permanent, that it just is.
Or if you don't understand its ending, you'll be terrified of death.
And what about gratification and drawback? That seems key.
Understanding the gratification means seeing the temporary, fleeting pleasure in, let's say, a pleasant feeling. The drawback is seeing that this same pleasant feeling is always conditioned, it's impermanent, and it's destined to either cease or even become painful. The ignorance is in focusing only on that fleeting gratification while completely ignoring the inevitable drawback.
And the escape. What's the escape?
The escape is the radical realization that true freedom lies in abandoning the desire and greed for that gratification. So, if you are ignorant of those 5 points, for all 5 of those aggregates which make up your entire perceived reality, then you are fundamentally trapped. It doesn't matter how clever you are in the material world.
This sounds like a huge information deficit, but it's one that requires this deep, direct seeing, not just, nodding along intellectually.
Exactly. Which is why the structure of the Four Noble Truths is so essential. It provides the very framework for the knowledge that's needed to eliminate this structural ignorance.
The suttas really stress that these core doctrines are everywhere. They're foundational and universal.
They are the complete body of knowledge required to reverse that whole chain of dependent origination we just talked about.
Okay, so let's try to nail down those definitions because they're so specific. The first noble truth, suffering or dukkha. And as you mentioned, the definition is, well, it's very clinical, isn't it?
It is. It's not just life is painful.
Right. It says suffering is the 5 grasping aggregates themselves. Why isn't just physical pain the definition? Why the whole package?
Because the pain that leads to that massive suffering, the sorrow, the lamentation, the distress, it isn't just a physical sensation. It's the clinging to the aggregates. If you weren't grasping at them, physical pain would still be unpleasant, sure, but it wouldn't trigger that mental anguish of identity loss, of my pain.
So the aggregates are suffering because they're the very basis of our mistaken identity view?
That's the core of it. That distinction is crucial.
Which leads to the second noble truth. The origin of suffering is craving. But again, the sources are specific. It's a certain kind of craving that leads to future lives, one that's mixed with relishing and greed. It's not just a generic desire.
Right. It breaks down into 3 specific types, which shows just how exhaustive attachment can be. There's craving for sensual pleasures, that's the obvious one. Then there's craving to continue existence.
The desire for a self to persist, eternalism.
Yes, and then craving to end existence. The desire to just be annihilated to escape the pain. All 3 are just different ways of trying to manipulate reality to satisfy a temporary, mistaken view of self.
So the role of wisdom, of Vipassanā in all this is to stop that craving. And it does that by directly observing these 5 aggregates until we finally fully comprehend their true nature.
Their origin, their ending, their gratification, their drawback, and their escape.
Exactly. The ultimate goal, as the texts state, is to see clearly with wisdom the full extent of form's gratification, drawback, and escape. If you don't truly understand those 5 points for all 5 aggregates, you haven't escaped. You're still attached, still fueling that cycle of existence.
Still caught in the world of gods, maras, and divinities, as they say. That clarity, that penetrating sight, that is the pivot point where the entire system starts to reverse.
Okay, so we have the diagnosis ignorance fuels this whole mass of suffering through conditioned existence and the grasping of these 5 aggregates. So now we can move into the remedy, the mechanical process of developing the mind to actually achieve that necessary sight.
The blueprint.
And that blueprint is the Noble Eightfold Path.
The Noble Eightfold Path, or NEP, is the practice that leads progressively to the cessation of suffering.
Yeah.
And what's crucial to understand is that it's not like a ladder where you perfect one step and then move to the next.
It's more integrated.
It's a foundation that becomes integrated and mutually supportive. They all work together.
And the progression It starts with intellect and intention. It begins with hearing the teaching, which allows you to gain that initial clarity and orientation. That's right view. What does that view actually entail?
Well, at its core, right view is the understanding of the Four Noble Truths. It's understanding dependent origination, that chain we just went through. And it's understanding karma, that our actions have consequences. This initial cognitive understanding is the prerequisite for everything else.
Without it, the rest of the path is just, what, meaningless ritual?
Pretty much. And once that view is established, it crystallizes into intention. That's right thought. This is the mental commitment, the sheer determination to align your mind with renunciation, with non-ill will, and with harmlessness.
And that determination then has to translate into actual behavior.
Immediately. The next three components form this indispensable ethical foundation, the training in higher ethics.
Yeah.
You have right speech, avoiding lying, divisive speech, harsh speech, idle chatter.
And right action.
Refraining from killing, stealing, and sexual misconduct. And then right livelihood, which is earning a living in a way that doesn't cause harm to others.
This ethical foundation sounds completely non-negotiable. Why is ethical conduct placed so firmly before all the deep meditative practices?
Because the texts are absolutely clear on this. Ethical conduct must be intact, impeccable, spotless, and unmarred. An ethical person has no regrets. And regret is a form of mental disturbance. It's a hindrance.
Okay. So if your mind is riddled with guilt or worry from unethical actions, it can never settle down enough.
It can never achieve the necessary peace and stability for deep concentration. So ethics prepares the ground for concentration. It's essential.
So with that ethical foundation solid, the path then moves into the purification of the mind. We're now entering the realm of mental cultivation, starting with right effort. How is that defined?
Right effort is the commitment to four very distinct tasks. First, preventing unskillful qualities like the hindrances from arising in the first place. Second, abandoning any unskillful qualities that have already arisen. Third, generating skillful qualities like the awakening factors that haven't shown up yet. And fourth, maintaining and perfecting the skillful qualities that are already present.
So it's this dynamic, constant upkeep of the mind's state.
It is. And right effort then supports right mindfulness, that intentional, keen awareness of the present moment. And finally, right mindfulness culminates in deep absorption or right immersion, what's called samādhi.
And that triad effort, mindfulness, immersion, that's how the mind achieves the stability and clarity it needs for wisdom to arise.
The entire path, as they say, slants, slopes, and inclines toward extinguishment. But the crucial mechanism, the engine that actually drives this transformation, needs a really close look. And that's rational application of mind, or Yoniso Manasikāra.
It seems like the entire success of the path just hinges on this one single mental factor. You called it the engine. How is this rational application functionally different from just, thinking hard or being intellectually smart?
It's the difference between merely reading a map and actually using that map to navigate rough terrain. Rational application is the ability to apply the correct philosophical principle, the right view we talked about, to your current lived experience, right here and now.
Okay.
The sources declare it very beneficial, and they contrast it sharply with irrational application, which they say is the source of great harm.
Okay, give me an example. Let's say I have a strong feeling of anger, which is an unskillful quality. Irrational application would be, what, thinking about all the reasons I'm right to be angry.
Exactly. You'd be applying your mind to the story of the anger, which just fuels it. Rational application, in that same moment, would be to immediately apply the principles of, say, impermanence or not self.
So you'd recognize the feeling of anger as just a conditioned thing. It's not me, and it's going to pass.
Precisely. You'd see, this is conditioned, this is not me, it will pass. You apply the principle of cessation directly to the live experience.
This sounds like the exact mechanism that prevents those 5 hindrances: sensual desire, ill will, dullness, restlessness, and doubt from ever getting a foothold.
It is. If you apply the mind rationally, the hindrances just don't arise. And if they have already risen, they are given up. This active steering role of the mind is so necessary because otherwise the mind just defaults to irrational application.
And that's what causes the hindrances to arise and prevents those 7 awakening factors from developing.
The positive flip side is that rational application is what intentionally fuels those 7 awakening factors,
which are mindfulness, investigation of principles, energy, rapture, tranquility, immersion, and equanimity.
Exactly. So if a mendicant, for instance, frequently applies their mind rationally to things that are a basis for serenity and calm, This directly fuels the arising and the full development of the factor of immersion. The factors build on each other, and they turn a temporary state into a continuous spiritual power.
And this whole process of mental cultivation leads us directly to the next stage. The training in the higher mind, deepening concentration through the absorptions, or the jhanas. Why are these deep states necessary for wisdom? Can't I just think my way to freedom?
Well, thinking that conceptual proliferation is the very activity that creates and sustains the self-view.
Hmm.
The mind needs to be unified and utterly still to see reality without all the interference of desire or worry or that conceptual overlay.
I see.
The sources describe the Noble Eightfold Path, when it's fully developed, as relying on seclusion, on fading away, and on cessation. The jhanas provide that profound, unshakable seclusion.
The jhanas are this progressive, four-stage process of internal refinement. Can you tell us about that initial stage, the first absorption?
Sure, the first absorption is achieved when the meditator, having purified their ethics and developed seclusion from unskillful qualities, generates this intense rapture, piti, and bliss, sukha, that is born from that very seclusion. The mind is still focused, but it's intensely joyful and deeply separated from the world's typical distractions.
A powerful, transformative experience of peace.
It really is. But the practice doesn't stop there. How does the mind get even more refined in the second absorption?
What happens next?
The mental activities of placing the mind and keeping it connected that were there in the first absorption, they get stilled. The mind unifies internally. And now the meditator experiences rapture and bliss that are born of immersion itself, characterized by this internal clarity and confidence. The sense doors are muted. The mind is a single unified entity.
And then in the third absorption, there's a shift away from that intensity of rapture.
Yes, rapture is a powerful, almost ecstatic state, but even that is eventually seen as a slight distraction. So in the third absorption, rapture fades away. It's replaced by this profound, stable equanimity, mindfulness, and the personal experience of bliss. The meditator becomes indifferent to the pleasantness of the state itself, simply abiding in this deep, calm well-being.
And this all culminates in the fourth absorption, which is considered the purest form of concentration.
Here, pleasure and pain are completely given up. All the former happiness and sadness, they just disappear. The meditator enters a state without pleasure or pain, maintaining pure equanimity and perfect, unwavering mindfulness. And crucially, in this state, the physical processes themselves are stilled.
So the mind is ready.
The mind is ready. It's bright, it's steady, it's utterly unbiased. It's prepared for the work of Vipassanā. It is the necessary preparation for deep, unshakable insight.
And the fundamental, ever-present tool that's used throughout this entire process, from ethical living all the way to the khanas, is mindfulness, satipallana.
This is the core instruction. The sources tell us a mendicant should live mindful and aware, meditating by observing an aspect of the body or feelings or the mind or principles. And this is not passive observation. It has to be done always, keen, aware, and mindful, rid of covetousness and displeasure for the world.
Okay, let's use the specific example the texts provide. Mindfulness of breathing. How does the seemingly simple act of watching your breath function as this powerful tool for liberation?
The instruction is incredibly detailed. The mendicant sits cross-legged, establishes mindfulness, and just observes the breath. They observe heavy breathing, light breathing, they experience the whole breath body, and critically, they actively work to still physical processes through the breath itself.
And the sources clarify that the breath is recognized as an aspect of the body. So by watching it, you are meditating by observing the body, establishing this continuous awareness. But why does this specific practice eliminate covetousness and displeasure?
Because the breath becomes the anchor for that rational application we talked about. When the mind is focused entirely on the conditioned, impermanent nature of the breath, its arising and its ceasing, it stops running after sensual objects or resisting painful thoughts. It achieves what they call internal serenity of heart.
And so this brings us back to an analogy you mentioned earlier. How does this deep immersion allow for the clarity needed for wisdom to finally arise?
The sources use this wonderful analogy of a bowl of water. If that water is stirred up by the wind, churning, swirling, and rippling, a person looking into it cannot see their own reflection clearly.
The stirring is the hindrances.
The stirring is the hindrances, the unskillful states. Deep immersion, the fourth absorption, functions like undisturbed, perfectly still water. It allows the meditator to check the reflection, to truly know and see the truth of reality without any distortion caused by the mind's usual agitation. That profound clarity is the necessary stage for insight to arise.
Okay, so we've established the foundation, which is ethics, and we've developed the tool, which is concentration and immersion. Now we have to turn to the ultimate act, the arising of wisdom itself, the actual Vipassanā, which means seeing things as they truly are.
And this wisdom, it doesn't just pop up out of nowhere. It is the final element in a very balanced structure known as the 5 spiritual faculties, the Indriyas.
Right. Let's look at how those 5 integrate. You have faith, trusting the path laid out by the teachings. Then energy, the persistence to actually cultivate the path. Mindfulness keeps the awareness continuous. Immersion unifies the mind. And then finally, wisdom takes that unified, prepared mind and uses it to penetrate reality.
And if any one of those is underdeveloped, the whole system fails. For example, if your faith is too strong and your wisdom is weak, you become gullible. If wisdom is too strong and immersion is weak, you become overly analytical and restless. It's all about balance.
And wisdom itself is described as this ability to see things clearly as they are, noble, penetrative, and leading to the complete end of suffering.
Yes, and the sources provide a very clear roadmap for what this wisdom sees. The content of the insight focuses entirely on those 5 aggregates, but through the framework of the 3 marks of existence. This is the ultimate cognitive shift.
The ultimate shift. So if the aggregates are the building blocks of the self.
The 3 marks are the non-negotiable truths about those blocks. They are impermanent, they are suffering, and they are not self.
Let's start with impermanence, Annika. It seems straightforward, but what's the deep insight into impermanence that leads to liberation, not just a casual observation that things change?
The deep insight recognizes that form, feeling, perception, choices, and consciousness are not just temporary. They are fundamentally unstable, they are suffering, and they are perishable. The wisdom sees the continuous, momentary arising, vanishing, and changing of phenomena, sights, sounds, ideas, even while they seem to be persisting.
And the instruction is radical.
It is. You must completely give up desire for what is impermanent.
So if the underlying cause that gives rise to my consciousness, say, contact between my eye and a visual object, is also impermanent, then there's no way for my consciousness to be permanent either.
How could it be? It's just a conditioned flow. The wisdom understands that clinging to anything in this flow is like trying to build a sandcastle on an eroding shore. You're just setting yourself up for guaranteed disappointment and distress.
Which brings us directly to the second mark, suffering, dukkha. Why is impermanence directly equated with suffering here?
Because anything that is impermanent cannot provide any lasting satisfaction or security. The texts are so explicit. Form is suffering. The cause and the reason that gives rise to form is also suffering. So if form is produced by what is suffering, how could it possibly be happiness?
It's not a statement of pessimism.
Not at all. It's a statement of function. The aggregates function in a way that is inherently unsatisfactory precisely because they decay and perish. Seeing this, really seeing it, eliminates doubt and helps you avoid the trap of chasing sensual pleasures.
Okay, now for the most radical shift, the ultimate insight. Not self-enough. This goes way beyond saying, my car is not me. This is saying my feelings, my thoughts, my very awareness are not me. How does wisdom penetrate something so counterintuitive?
Wisdom requires seeing all of the aggregates, past, future, present, internal, external, subtle, or solid, with the ultimate right understanding, which is the phrase, this is not mine, I am not this is not myself. That declaration dismantles the very mechanism of ignorance.
So where does this idea of myself even come from, according to the sources?
It comes about when the unlearned person regards any of the 5 aggregates as self, or as having a self, or the self being in them, or them being in the self. It's what's called identity view.
But when the learned noble disciple uses their prepared, concentrated mind
to see that these aggregates are merely conditioned processes, they're not self, that identity view simply does not come about.
What's fascinating to me is the direct psychological link the sources draw between this realization and the end of emotional distress. If I regard my consciousness as myself, and then I see that my consciousness is decaying and perishing, what happens?
Well, that's what gives rise to sorrow, lamentation, pain, sadness, and distress. The anxiety comes from confusing the impermanent process, which is consciousness, with a permanent ownership-based entity, a self.
So the suffering isn't the impermanence itself.
No, the suffering is the clinging to the impermanent as mine.
Therefore, the wisdom that realizes this is not myself acts as an instantaneous removal of all that anxiety.
It really does. When sorrow, lamentation, pain, sadness, and distress are given up, it's because you understand the impermanence of form. It's perishing, it's fading away, it's cessation, and you truly see it with right understanding. The wisdom removes the burden of trying to maintain this fundamentally maintenance-free conditioned flow of reality.
So the entire mechanics of cessation are really a process of disillusionment, but a completely rational one.
Yes, the progression is logically sound. You rationally apply the mind, which has been developed through immersion, to the impermanence of the senses, the eye, the ear, the mind, and their objects. And this penetrating view leads to a growing disillusionment with the very things you previously found so gratifying.
And what follows disillusionment?
Being disillusioned, desire fades away. It's the natural, inevitable consequence. When desire fades away, they are freed. And once they're freed, they know they are freed. This knowledge, this certainty is the final fruit of wisdom. The meditator understands. Rebirth is ended. The spiritual journey has been completed. What had to be done has been done. There's nothing further for this place.
That sequence disillusionment, the fading of desire, and then freedom, that defines the state of the mind that has successfully achieved Vipassanā. This is the ultimate spiritual maturity. This is the mind that is truly released.
And this state is described not just in philosophical terms, but in these evocative, almost sensory ways. It's the end of all attachments, which is known as quenching, or nibbana. When the mind is well freed, the mental forces of relishing and greed, they just cease entirely. The realized individual is cooled, quenched.
The sources use some incredibly powerful analogy to describe this transformation. The image of the serpent shedding its skin always comes to mind for me.
It's such a profound image of total letting go. They describe the realized individual as having shed the near shore and the far shore, just like a serpent sheds its old, worn-out skin. The old skin represents the aggregates of grasping, all those outdated identities that were built on ignorance. They've just slipped out of conditioned reality.
And they're described as unyoked.
Unyoked from all yokes, human and heavenly. They have nothing before them, no attachment to the past, nothing after, no fear or craving for the future, and nothing in between. So no clinging to the present moment's aggregates. They're described as a hero, a master of the whole world, because they're no longer governed by its conditions.
What specifically does the final wisdom of this perfected one actually know in this state?
Their knowledge and vision of freedom isn't a belief, it's unshakable, and it's definitive. They declare with absolute certainty, my freedom is unshakable, this is my last rebirth, now there'll be no more future lives. This is the pinnacle of the whole system we've been tracing. True knowledge and vision leading to permanent disillusionment and freedom.
And this state of freedom provides complete immunity from all those existential snares, which the texts personify as Mara, the evil one, the Terminator.
Right, the force that keeps beings bound to existence.
Yeah.
The one who has attained this state is freed from all of Mara's snares, both the ones related to human desires and even the subtle heavenly desires. They are unshaken. The sources use this analogy that even if Vulture's Peak itself were shaken to its foundations, the mendicant would remain perfectly steady.
And we even see the ultimate attainment of concentration used as, well, almost as a weapon against Mara.
We do. Those who successfully develop the ultimate states of non-material concentration, like the dimension of nothingness or neither perception nor non-perception, they're described as having blinded Mara. They've gone beyond the reach of the forces of death and desire, and they've achieved this great direct knowledge with the help of the teacher's blueprint.
We've stressed so much that this wisdom is intensely practical and it hinges on concentration, but it all rests on that ethical base. Can we really separate wisdom from conduct?
Absolutely not. The suttas emphasize repeatedly that ethical conduct must be the non-negotiable prerequisite. It has to be intact, impeccable, spotless, unmarred, because it alone leads seamlessly into the necessary immersion practice.
It all connects.
An ethical life is the first condition for freedom from regret. And freedom from regret is the condition for joy, which leads to rapture, tranquility, bliss, right immersion, and then ultimately true knowledge and vision. The wisdom has to be integrated with the character.
And the sources also emphasize that the environment for this transformation is vital. It's rarely a solo journey. The presence of good friends or spiritual companions makes a huge difference.
A mendicant trainee who has good friends is assured of growth, not decline, in skillful qualities. And good friends are defined by their actions. They're respectful, conscientious, energetic, and wise. They provide support through kindness and generosity, and they help that rational application of mind flourish.
Conversely, the texts give a very sobering depiction of the bad person, the one who can't follow this path.
Yeah, the bad person lacks the basic components needed. They are faithless, shameless, imprudent, unlearned, lazy, unmindful, and witless. They're fundamentally incapable of the sustained effort required for right effort, and rational application,
And they do bad things.
by way of body, speech, and mind, and it results in painful rebirths. The contrast really highlights that wisdom isn't some gift. It's the natural culmination of a life that is systematically dedicated to ethical and mental cultivation.
So if we take this entire deep dive and we distill the answer to our listener's question, what is wisdom, or Vipassanā, and how does it arise?
It is not theoretical knowledge. Wisdom is a direct, realized knowledge. It stems from an ethical foundation and the powerful, continuous practice of that rational application of mind. And this application is intensified and made stable through intense concentration, the jhanas or immersion. And it's actualized by fully comprehending the three marks of existence.
The impermanent suffering and not-self nature of all conditioned experience, especially those five grasping aggregates.
That's it. And the path is a progressive one. It starts with ethical living and the intentional use of the mind, that critical rational application which is available to you, the listener, right now. The required knowledge for freedom, seeing impermanence and not self, is accessible to anyone who commits to the training.
The whole process ensures the mind is purified, brightened, and made steady.
And when the mind achieves that purity, it can truly understand the ending, the fading away, the cessation, and the letting go of all desire and greed for the six sense fields. That is the necessary clarity.
Finally, we close with the ultimate vision, the final provocative thought drawn directly from the experience of profound liberation. The highest form of wisdom allows a mendicant to know and see the truth such that they perceive. This is peaceful, this is sublime. That is, the stilling of all activities, the letting go of all attachments, the ending of craving, fading away, cessation, extinguishment. Consider what it means for a human being to still all activities, both the physical processes stilled in the fourth jhana, and the conceptual mental activities stilled by realizing not self, and to perceive only this profound, unshakable peace, which the texts claim is the ultimate reality.